Everyone loves a good origin story. That's why we're excited to rewind the clock for a new series, the Producer Podcast Origins, as we hear from our numerous guests of the show on what led them into the film industry and the producing role specifically. Here on the inaugural episode of the Producer Podcast Origins, we're rewinding all the way to season 1 of the show. And starting off, we're going to hear from Sarah Burnett, producer with Realcast Productions.
I wanted to be a filmmaker, I think, right when the San Antonio Independent Christian Film Festival started, and I realized that people could make films because I'd been doing skits and writing scripts and different programs from when I was young. So I was probably 12 or 14, and we made actually a 45-minute film in Ireland, and I directed and produced that, and my sister and I co-wrote that script. So we made it with my cousins. They were living over there at the time, and so that was kind of my introduction. And then I kind of took a break and finished high school, went into college, and I knew I liked film, but I ended up getting a degree in communications because it seemed more usable and a little broader, which I really ended up loving that degree with the emphasis in journalism, especially. So I kind of have a love for not just film, but true stories and what you can do in documentary or promotional work where you can really get to the heart of real people instead of just coming up with fictional characters. So I did that in college and then started working with a missions organization and became their communications director. And so through that, I started making films with them, and I was directing / producing on a lot of that stuff.
Cool. You definitely had a very unique filming location for your first film, as opposed to backyards like most people start with.
It was pretty epic. Just the house my cousins lived in had a lot of character that felt a little more film locationist than most houses here, and so that added a really cool dynamic. And you should have seen, like, my dear parents. I was 15, my sister was 13, I think, when we were making this project, and we somehow convinced them that one of our pieces of luggage for this international trip with 8 kids was to bring along this huge duffel bag of costumes. And then I used my uncle's computer to edit it because my computer back in the States wasn't capable, and I believe I ruined his computer for the amount of processing power that it had to do. So I had many very nice and kind family members who contributed.
Sounds like it. So getting started, was the producer position always where you gravitated towards? Because usually people think they want to run the camera or be the director and all that when they're first getting started.
So, yeah, originally, I think my passion was mostly just to tell stories and tell true stories. And so originally I did some script writing. It was fun. Honestly, my sister is more creative than I am, and so she ended up writing most of the script, and I sat there and did the planning and locations. And then, of course, I ran the camera because I was the only person who knew how to do that. But as I look back, I see a lot of producing through it all. And in college, I did a capstone project on how to run a volunteer program for nonprofits, and I realized that I had been organizing people since I was 5 years old. So I grew up with my cousins, right? And so there are 15 kids, and I was always the, hey, let's make a movie. Hey, let's do a skit. Hey, let's go do some ministry opportunity. I was always organizing to the point that I remember I was doing a little photo shoot. We were at a friend's farm with my sisters, and I was like, hey, you guys need to line up like this. It'll look a lot better. And people were like, you are so bossy. And I always felt a little self-conscious about that until I realized there were actual titles for some of this stuff. So as I look back, though, I think I started as a director type person because there was no one else to wear that hat. But I definitely always leaned into logistics and making it work for the people. And I was always taking people and putting them in a team that worked best for them. So I think I was a born producer. I probably didn't really accept that until like 3 years ago.
Okay.
So, and the other, I guess I'll throw this in here. So last year, when we produced the Ellerslie project, I was actually pretty intimidated by that project because I had only technically produced films with real cast with crews of maybe 8 or less. And so here I had 25 people. There was a lot of travel involved with that. There was altitude, there was costumes, like there's just a lot of factors. So we get up in the mountains, and I'm like, you know, I'm the newbie on this shoot, and here I am. And there had been people who had done producing for Motion University before me, so I was like, there's people who know how to do this. Like, how do I know? And I got up there, and I can't remember. I feel like it was like in the car, like as we're loading all the people, I realized that I had technically been a producer back when I did missions work in India. And so I think for me, the producer journey was like, I was always doing it. I just didn't have the title. And so I've actually really enjoyed in the last couple of years just embracing that title. Like, this is what I do. I do numbers. I do schedules. I do hiring. I do project management. I do contracts. Like there's a title that covers all of this. But as far as getting started in it, it's kind of been something I've done for a long time.
Next up, we'll hear from Scott Peterson, producer at II Films.
Sure. I started writing as a hobby. In fact, The Treasure Lies is the first movie I ever wrote. I had the idea ages ago in 1999, and I kind of was thinking, hey, this would make a great movie kind of thing. And there's some plot twists in there, and I thought, hey, that's kind of a catchy thing. And so I thought about it, and I didn't really do anything about it. And I was at a Barnes & Noble bookstore, and I was in the line, and as I was leaving, I noticed in the bargain bin they had a book called The Screenwriter's Bible. And so I bought that. It was only $1. And I was like, oh, perfect. This is a sign that I should write this movie. So I started, I read how to format and all that stuff, and wrote my first movie, and just started going from there. And I've probably written, 15 or so scripts. And but when I got married, my wife read The Current, and she said, we should make this into a movie. And we were kind of inspired by the Kendrick brothers that did, Fireproof, Ace and the Giants and all those. But we had seen one called Flywheel, their first movie. And they did it on a budget of like $27,000, I think it was. And they used lights that they bought from Home Depot. And I was just like, okay, that we can do. We looked into producing our movie ourselves, and nothing fell into place. Roadblock, doors closed. So we're like, okay, God doesn't want us to make movies. So 6 months later, we're at a vision dinner that our pastor put on, and he asked the congregation, when was the last time for Christ you tried something utterly and laughably impossible? And my wife hits me on the shoulder, and she goes, he's talking about your movie, right? And from that moment on, we consider ourselves, quote unquote, movie producers. And we dove in, and doors that had been closed were open. I got an email a week before that vision dinner from the Boy Scout camp that said, hey, I thought you were going to use our camp for a movie. And I thought they had said no because they didn't respond, And so all these doors were open, and we're like, it was all in God's timing now. And it all worked out. That the vision dinner was in November. And by April, we were casting, and we were filming in July. So everything fell into place.
It sounds like from the beginning, you've always kind of been filling that producer position. Why has that been your interest or area of work? Because a lot of people you meet, they always want to be the director or the DP or these other roles. You never hear a lot about people wanting to be producers.
Yeah. Boy, I don't know even that I want to be. Just that I think what I enjoy the most is the writing. I love writing it, and then later on watching it come to life on screen. But nobody else was really willing to do it. We couldn't find. I actually went to like 3 pitch fests in Hollywood, pitching my movies, and none of them were willing to do it. And like I said, we were encouraged by the Kendrick brothers, and we're like, okay, they produced their own movie, we can do this. And so we just kind of dove in. I actually do enjoy it, but the most enjoyable thing I think is the writing. But the actual process, the production part, I have learned to enjoy.
Yeah.
Well, the first time around, when you don't know what you're doing, it gets really, and I don't even necessarily know what I'm doing now, but I'm just doing what needs to be done, putting out the fires that pop up, and it's like whack-a-mole.
Continuing the origin stories, we have Hannah Bartlett from Bartlett Idea Co.
Honestly, probably the same way that a lot of other people have, is just starting out with doing backyard films with my siblings and with friends. I got my first digital camera when I was 16 and just loved being able to create photos, which then turned into doing video. And some friends and I actually took 2.5 years to create a feature film. And it was a lot of work, but a lot of fun. And definitely not something I would ever want to publish. But we learned a lot through the process. And from there is kind of when I started getting more into I really enjoy doing this. I want to keep doing this at the time just as a hobby. But I did start getting more into doing a short documentary and then doing some short client work and that type of thing. And that's around the time in 2014 when Andrew and I, along with my mom, started Motion University. And that's really what got us going into oh, wow, okay, we love doing this. It's a great community to work with. We learned a lot. And that got me really started more into doing the promotional filmmaking. So yeah, I've been doing that full time since 2016. I would say the first thing that attracted me to film was probably more the camera side of things.
Okay.
When we did the backyard stuff, just the fun stuff with friends or whatever, I was always the one behind the camera. And usually editing as well. So that's kind of interesting to me because I feel like I use both the right and left side of my brain, have a little bit of the creative in there, but also some of that, organizational and stuff too. So I think what first got me into it was really more the camera and the editing and that type of thing. As I got working more with Andrew and started going into it more, thinking of it as a career and doing it more full time with Andrew, his strong point is really creative. He's full right brain, visionary, he's great at that. And I'm a firstborn. I tend to think more black and white. So I naturally started kind of going towards more the organizational, the budget, the communication, that type of thing, especially in working with Andrew, because we were just a really good team in that way. So I feel those strengths of mine and the interest in that kind of slowly developed as we got going more into doing filmmaking full time.
Returning to the narrative side of the industry, we have Katherine Johnson with Sheepshed Entertainment.
I was determined to be a missionary doctor until I was 14. And in the course of about 9 months, I became utterly sick at the sight of blood and decided to go from the medical field to filmmaking, the most logical progression you could possibly make. And at the end of that 9-month period, actually, I became perfectly fine with blood once again. It was just the strangest thing. It was this little period of time where God was like, I have other plans for you. But anyway, so from 14 on, I got my first little digital camcorder. The immediate response to getting one was making narrative films. So that really never stopped. And then slowly just inched up and up. And from there, I had one contact when I used to live in Dallas, Fort Worth Metroplex. I had one friend in the film industry, and she contacted me one day and she said, oh, there's this Christian movie around the corner from your house and they're shooting and they need someone in the art department. And my first response was, I don't know how to draw. I can barely paint. Stick figures are awful when I do them. So I was really concerned. So I sent back this really long text message on my flip phone expressing all of my concerns. And she was like, no, they just no. And so I got my first internship on the film Hoovie, and that kind of kickstarted everything from there. So
Nice. So lately with a lot of the Sheepshed projects, you've been working more as a producer. Was that always kind of the position you navigated to? Because a lot of people, that's not the area of film you hear them wanting to pursue.
I think it was just a necessity frankly. But it was a necessity born of, I don't know, I hate to say that I have natural AD skills, but the world of logistics and being a first AD and being a producer are very similar. And so it was an area that I could do without too much brain work. So I did end up, now I have more producer credits than I have director credits, which is not the way that I expected things to go, but I'm enjoying where it's taking me.
And finally, rounding out this episode of the Producer Podcast Origins, we're joined by Matthew Jordan.
So when I was younger, I saw the movie Facing the Giants in theaters, and that was the first movie I had ever seen in a theater, and it really hit me hard because I loved football growing up. That was my favorite sport, and it was also a really powerful film. And getting that DVD, I think I got it for my birthday the next year, and got to see behind the scenes. And that was the first time I really had this that I'd never seen what it was like for a movie to be filmed. And that was the first desire where I was like, I want to do this. So I think I was about 9 or 10 at the time, and moving through life, I eventually ended up saving up money and buying a MacBook Pro laptop when I was 12, and my parents had helped go in on it with me and stuff. And what happened was I had kind of bought that with the purpose of wanting to video edit. I'd seen that they had this awesome video editing program, iMovie. I love it still, but that's what I got my start on. I started on iMovie, and the first video I ever filmed was on my MacBook Pro webcam, and it's still available on YouTube. It's called The Red Rider, and I filmed it with the webcam, and I edited it on iMovie, and that was the first completed short film I ever did, and it was a Western shootout with orange plastic guns. It's great. And so the summary of kind of my story into filmmaking is that I was very overwhelmed when I first started getting into this, and I realized very quickly I knew nothing. I didn't know where to start, and I knew I needed somebody to train me, and I knew I needed money, because it was I started looking up cameras, and it was the cameras I knew were good were thousands of dollars. And so I actually prayed when I was 12, and this is after I bought my laptop, and I prayed, and I was like, God, if you want me to be a filmmaker, a Christian filmmaker, provide somebody to train me and provide money. And within a couple days, I saw a clear answer to prayer where a connection came, someone we met who knew somebody, and through that connection, within a few months, I knew this person that kind of became this mentor in my life for video and videography. And then a couple days after I prayed that, I had this knowing. I was like, God, you just answered my prayer. And so from that day forward, I really had a real drive and vision, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I want to learn about video. I want to get into video. And basically, I've done a lot. I started doing YouTube videos, and my YouTube channel is still up there, all my funny short videos that I've done. And so I really got into it in my high school years. And when I was 15, I made a short film with some other friends, and this was the first real deal short film. There was a script, and there was basically a script. There was a boom pole and a script and a camera, and I got to film it and called myself the director. But no, it was a good experience. It was a hard experience. I went in with a lot of expectations of how good I wanted to make it, and it came out so much the first day hit me. I was like, oh God, what's going on? This is horrible. And I remember crying that night, being like, this, I don't know how it's going to happen. Sounds like the story of most film projects I've been part of, but I finished the short film, and I thought, hey, did a short film. What's next? Feature film, of course. And so start thinking, oh, feature film's next, praying about it. And I just assumed, this is going to be with the same group of people that we got along pretty well. I think this is a good thing going on. And And year goes by, and I basically graduate high school and nothing's really happened. Nothing's opened as far as a feature film. And maybe one short film came up after high school. It was like Barn Band, but it was such a dry season. And what's interesting is that when I was a senior in high school, I had a business class and I ended up making a video company called MJ Multimedia. And this opened up the door to, I feel, the second answer to my prayer, which was the money. And so this is something where it was like I was always editing, I was always filming. It was not filmmaking like I wanted to be doing, but it was paying me, and like it was like a profession. And through that, it's like I've had the money to spend on equipment, and I've had the ability to rent equipment and things like that. And so all these things prepared me. And when I graduated high school that year, I had kind of forgotten that I had prayed so hard for a feature film. And I had prayed when I was 15 through probably 16, 17 maybe. I remember writing down this prayer. And Gilbert Sorolla, who was a friend of my dad's, he owned a property management business, and we were good friends with the Sorolla family. We went on a picnic after the National Day of Prayer. There was some public event in town, and we went on a picnic, and me and him went on a walk, and we never really talked much before. And he was sharing with me some things about the Army and how it relates to spiritual warfare, and I kind of was like, oh, that'd be good material for a movie. And I didn't think much of it. That's all I said, and this is just me being Matthew, because I'm always looking for stuff that would be good material for a movie.
Yes.
And so I'll drop a comment like that all the time. But that was something that really stood out to Gilbert. And he had never even considered making a movie before in his life. And so then he gets excited about, hey, we should make a movie. And I'm having trouble getting into it because like I have this expectation and imagination in my head of like what it'll look like when I do a feature film. Like I'll work with these people, we'll like film it here, that, and it was interesting because Gilbert said, hey, let's start meeting. Can we meet Tuesday and talk about it? Let's meet this Tuesday and talk about it. So we met every week for like a half a day. And this birthed the story of Countercolumn, which is the movie that we just finished and we're still kind of working on. It's been like a huge journey, and I'll talk more about it later, I'm sure. But it's just like a testimony. Like my road to filmmaking has been very unexpected and very non-traditional, which I don't know if there's any traditional route into filmmaking, but for me, it's not been going and working with other people like I would have loved to. It's been very much like I stayed here in this area and I did video production and have had a lot of leadership experience and all these different things, and it's just like things that dropped in my lap sort of, but it's very unexpected, and even up till it happens. So but yeah, that's kind of like.
So I'm kind of curious, because like when I go to a lot of film festivals and that, you meet plenty of people that want to be like actors, directors, DPs. Was the producer area kind of where you always were interested in, or how did that come about?
That is a good question. The answer is no. It was not. I didn't even know about producer role. I wanted to just make films, and I always wanted to be behind the camera. And I think one of the things that I fell in love with early on was editing. And so I would tell people, oh, I want to be an editor. And they're like, oh, there's not enough of those. That's awesome. But I always kind of still saw myself. I never saw myself as the actor, more of the behind the scenes. And I've acted in a lot of my shorts because you have to, even Countercolumn, I had to bite the bullet and be an extra. And that's just, it goes with the territory. It's like you're doing anything you can to get your movie done. But I was always filming and bringing it together, organizing it. And I didn't know it, but my whole life I had been producing. And so to me, it was kind of a realization. I started to really understand producing more either my first or my second time going to the Christian Worldview Film Festival. And I started hearing talks on producing and realize, oh, I get that, and I kind of do that, and maybe that's my place in filmmaking. Because having a business, organization, accounting, all those things like come second nature. You have to do all those things. And so to me, coming on to filmmaking and being able to use all those things is easy. And some people, like, they come into filmmaking and they end up having to produce, not really wanting to be the producer really, but they don't realize that they need a producer or a production manager. And so it's all a drag. They don't realize how much of a drag it is to do all these things. To me, it's like a joy because I like details and I like organization. And I think the biggest thing that stands out to me about being a producer is that you're making something happen. And so when I had the realization, oh, producing is like my thing, like I think that's my thing. When I had that realization, it was like I was also realizing, like, I meet all these talented people and all of them are looking for jobs and all of them are wanting to be on film sets. And none of them are the people to actually make something happen that they can work on. And so who does that? It struck me there's such a lack of the true filmmakers, like the true people who are like making it happen. And I was like, maybe that's my place. Because, like, you know, it's as simple as like organizing a short film. You know, it's like getting everyone together and stepping back and watching them work. It's cool to have the vision to see something that, like, from that perspective.
Yeah.
It's unique. It's awesome. But I didn't see myself as a producer until I realized what a producer does.
Okay.
And then I was like, that's totally what I'm supposed to do.
And with that, we're going to exit the time machine back to present day. Stay tuned for more editions of the Producer Podcast Origins coming soon, as well as new episodes of the show arriving this fall.